here we go. Alrighty. Period 1. Alright, so find all zeros. You'll notice that most of the instructions on these ones say find all zeros. We've just got different things going on. What do you notice about equation number 1? It has x squared already. It's not a higher degree. So since it has x squared, how many answers am I looking for? 2. And with a second degree, I can either snowflake
or quadratic formula.
Or I can quadratic formula. I always want to try snowflake first because it's easier, but I don't think snowflake's going to work because there's no two numbers that'll multiply to get 2 and add to get -6, are there? So I have to do my x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, right? What is my a value here? 1. What is my b value? -6. And my c value is 2. So, -6 plus or minus the square root of -6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2 all over 2 times 1. Let's see. -6 is 6. And just to save time, I'll tell you that this right here equals 28. All over 2. Now, I think I have to draw a tree for 28, don't I? So let's see. 28, I'm running out of room, so I'm going to come over here. 14 and 2. 7 and 2. So what can come out? A 2, and the 7 has to stay inside. So, 6 plus or minus 2 rad 7 over 2. Now, I had a lot of people asking me questions yesterday about what do you do here? And I was a little bit discouraged by that because I told you every single time you have to split it up into 2 fractions. Have to. So 6 over 2 plus or minus 2 rad 7 over 2. What is 6 over 2? It's 3. And that's going to cancel, so I'm just left with rad 7. So 3 plus or minus rad 7 is my answer to number 1. Some groups just put the possible zeros. Does it ask for possible zeros? And with an x squared, you don't have to deal with possible zeros. Just go straight to snowflake or quadratic formula. Okay? Number 2 is a little different because it does ask for the possible zeros. So, I need to find the factors of the constant. What's the constant? -3. So I have what? Plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 3. And the leading coefficient? Plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 5. My fractions. 1 over 1, 3 over 1. So that's 1 and 3. 1 over 5, 3 over 5. And there's my possibles. Okay. Factored form in the zeros. Now, this problem was worth 8 points. Most of the 8 points are going to come from these two right here. This one I think I counted as 1 or 2 points of the 8. The remaining ones were from there. Factored form. People were asking me yesterday what factored form is. If it asks for factored form, I expect to see parentheses, right? Doesn't make sense to have zeros and not have the matching parentheses. I don't get that. So I have a 3rd degree. I only need to find 1 0, and then I'll be down to a point where I can either snowflake or quadratic formula. So I'm going to start with my list. I'm going to start with 1. Positive 1. Are there any missing terms? 3, 2, 1. Nope. All right. So 5, -9, -17, and -3. Bring down the 5. 1 times 5 is 5. -9 and 5 is -4. Yeah? 1 times -4 is -4. That gives me -21. -21, -24. 1 does not work. So what should I try next? -1. 5, negative 9, negative 17, negative 3. Bring down the 5. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. That gives me negative 14. Negative 14 times negative 1 is positive 14. That gives me negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. There's my remainder of 0. So what does that mean? Negative 1 is one of the zeros. What would the parentheses be for factored form that gave me that answer? X plus 1. And now I'm down to what? 5x to the, it was cubed, I took out 1, so now I'm x squared, minus 14x minus 3. I'm going to try snowflake. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. And negative 14, what are two numbers that multiply to get negative 15 and add to get negative 14? Negative 15 and positive 1. What goes on the top? 5x and 5x. This one reduces to x over negative 3. So what is that in parentheses? X minus 3. Don't change the sign there. The only time you change the sign is when you're going from here to here. What would the answer be that comes from that parentheses? Positive 3. And you could do the work there. X minus 3 equals 0. Add your 3. And you get x equals 3. This one doesn't reduce, so I have a parentheses of 5x plus 1. And let's set that equal to 0. Subtract 1. 5x equals negative 1. X equals negative 1/5. Third degree polynomial, I expect to see 3 parentheses represented in your factored form and 3 zeros listed because it's a third degree. Questions on that one? We good there?
Yeah.
Next one. Find all zeros. 1 has been given to you. So again, I'm doing the same thing, but this time I'm telling you what one of them is. So when I go to my list of zeros, I know that 1/5 is kind of the gimme answer. That one is the easiest one because I'm already telling you it's an answer. Am I missing any terms? 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Nope. 15, negative 88, 42, 120, negative 25. Let's bring this guy down. 15. What's 15 times 1/5? Do we need to use the calculator? 15 times 1 fraction button 5. 3. Negative 88 and 3 is negative 85. So now negative 85 times 1 fraction button 5. Negative 17. 42 minus 17 is 25. Times 1/5 is 5. 120 and 5 is 125. And 125 times, not divided by, times 1/5 is 25. There's my 0. Now, what would happen if I don't get a 0 there? What does that mean? That doesn't mean it's not a 0, not in this case. It means I did something wrong because they told me it was a 0. It has to get a remainder of 0. That wasn't one that I was just guessing. Okay? So that one has to give me a remainder of 0. From there, I need to look at my list of possibilities. Now, my list of possibilities, plus or minus 1, 5, 25, and then 1, 3, 5, 15. That's kind of a long list, right? I'm going to go with the nice numbers, and just because my gut is telling me to do it, all of those have what in common? So I'm going to try 5, just see if it works. So let's see. 15, by the way, I had x to the 4th, this was x to the 3rd. If I can get it down one more degree, I can use my other methods. Negative 85, 25, and 125. 15 times 5, 75. That's negative 10. That would be negative 50. And that would be negative 25. And that would be negative 125. Yay! So another 0 is 5. And what am I down to now? What degree? That was x to the third. Now I'm down to x to the second. So let me write what I have left. 15x squared minus 10x minus 25. I'm going to try factoring it, but I'm going to take a 5 out. So 3x squared minus 2x minus 5. There's not going to be an answer with the 5. Let's see. Negative 15 and negative 2. What are two numbers that multiply to get negative 15 and add to get negative 2? Negative 5 and 3. On the top, I put 3x and 3x. 3x over negative 5 cannot be reduced, so that means it makes the parentheses 3x minus 5. What do I get when I set that equal to 0? Three x equals 5. I get x equals 5/3. What about 3x over 3? Does that reduce to x over 1? So I have x plus 1. Yeah? Yeah? X plus 1 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 1. X equals negative 1. That's my other answer. Now, what if I didn't have this gut feeling that because all those were divisible by 5, that 5 might not have been the one that worked? What would I do in that case? I would start working just like I did in the previous one. Start with 1 and then try negative 1. It wouldn't take me that long to get to an answer because, as you can see, negative 1 is an answer. So I would have gotten to an answer fairly quick. My factoring would have looked a little different because it would have given me 2 different answers instead of the negative 1. Does that make sense? So if you didn't try 5 here, my hope is that you tried 1, and then once you saw that 1 didn't work, that you tried negative 1 and you got one that did work. Okay? All right. Questions about that guy? Backside. Okay. This one needs everything, but this one provides a graph for me. Yay! All right. Possible zeros. My factors of my constant are what? Plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 5. My leading coefficient, 1, 2, and 4. So let's set up our fractions. 1 over 1 and 5 over 1. That would be 1 and 5. 1 over 2 and 5 over 2 doesn't reduce at all, so I have 1 over 2 and 5 over 2. And then 1 over 4 and 5 over 4, again, not reducing. That's my list of possibilities. We good there? Good answer. Factored form and then the zeros, again, that's going to be like what I did here in number 2. The difference with this problem is I give you a graph. Now, something that was strange to me was that a lot of groups got all the zeros, but they didn't have all the zeros represented in their factored form. They would say like, oh, 1/2 is a 0, but they didn't have the corresponding parentheses to it. So make sure that we have a 4th degree, so I need to see 4 parentheses represented, and I need to see 4 answers. Okay? All right, how does the picture help me? Well, it helps me with deciding what to guess. What do you notice about the x-intercepts on this graph? What do you notice about them? Negative 1, what do you notice about negative 1? It has a multiplicity of 2. How do I know that it has a multiplicity of 2? Because it bounces off. So, if it has a multiplicity of 2, let's see what that does. So negative 1 should work. I have 4, 16, 15, negative 2, and negative 5. Let's check this. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. That would be 12. Negative 12, 3, negative 3, negative 5, 5, and 0. So negative 1 does work. So I know that negative 1 is an answer. It's a 0. And what would the parentheses look like? X plus 1. Now, if it indeed does have a multiplicity of 2, which it should, how do I show that? Well, I'm going to use negative 1 again. I took my x to the 4th. Now I'm down to x to the 3rd. I'm going to take it again, and hopefully it'll go down to x to the 2nd. So I have 4, 12, 3, and negative 5. So let's see. Bring down the 4. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. That gives me 8. Negative 8, negative 5, positive 5, and 0. Yay! So how do I do this? It works twice. So here I know I write multiplicity of 2. So that's 2 of my 4 zeros. How do I represent that in factored form? It's very easy. How do I do it? Squared. That's it. All right. So now I'm down to x to the 2nd. So I have, let's see, 4x to the 2nd plus 8x minus 5. Let's try snowflake. How many more answers am I looking for? 2, because I have 2 and it's a 4th degree. All right. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. And positive 8. What are two numbers that multiply to get 20 and add to get 8? 10 and 2. Which one has to be negative? The 2. So I have 4x and 4x. What does 4x over 10 reduce to? 2x over 5, right? That means I have a parentheses that says 2x plus 5. And if I set 2x plus 5 equal to 0, I'm going to get a 0, or a root. So I'm going to divide by 2, and x equals negative 5 halves. Okay, and 4x over negative 2, that's going to reduce to what? 2x over negative 1. What does that look like as parentheses? 2x minus 1, right? And if I set 2x minus 1 equal to 0, add 1, 2x equals 1, divide by 2, and what does x equal? Positive 1/2. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So there? Alrighty. Find all the zeros of the polynomial function using any method we have learned in class. What's the easiest method to find zeros? Snowflake. Do I have that rule where this has to be cut in half to get that? Do I have that rule that I can snowflake?
Yeah.
I do. 6 and 3, 4 and 2, 8 and 4, anytime it's that pattern, I can use snowflake. So if I use snowflake, what do I get? I have negative 28, and I have 3. What are two numbers that multiply to get negative 28 and add to get 3? 7 and 4. Which one has to be negative? The 4, so that way they multiply still to get negative 28, and that's the only way they can add to get positive 3. What do I put on top, though? If it was x to the 4th, what do I put? X to the 2nd. You cut it in half. Give half of them to this side, half of them to the other side. Dang it! I don't know if it's still recording. I sure hope it's recording. Okay. All right. I know. That's okay. X squared plus 7 is one of my parentheses, and the other one is x squared minus 4. Well, what's x squared minus 4? I can go further with that, can't I? X plus 2 and x minus 2, right? And x squared plus 7. So let's see, what's my answer from here? Negative 2. And from here? 2. So, two of my answers are positive and negative 2. The other one I'm going to get from here. X squared plus 7 equals 0. By the way, if I did not do this, if I didn't notice the difference of squares and I just set x squared minus 4 equal to 0, I still get positive and negative 2. I get x squared equals 4, square root, remembering your plus and minus, and there's your plus or minus 2. So either way, x squared plus 7 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 7. That's going to give me x squared equals negative 7. And when I square root this one, I have a negative under my square root. So what does that mean? I still have to have my plus or minus, but I can't leave the negative under my radical. So what does that mean? I take out an I, and then the 7 has to stay in the radical because he doesn't have a partner to come out with. So my other two answers are plus and minus I radical 7. Questions there? All right, last two problems. Write a polynomial function of least degree with integral coefficients that has the given zeros. Negative 4 is a 0. Does that mean that positive 4 is a 0? No, because that conjugate thing only counts with what? Radicals and i's. So, if negative 4 is a root, what would the parentheses look like that it came from? X plus 4. Now it says it has a multiplicity of 2, which means what? It's listed twice. Okay? Now, 5i is a root, which means what else is also a root? Negative 5i. So, I would have x minus 5i and x plus 5i. All I have to do at this point is multiply. Yeah? Easier said than done. All right. I am going to multiply the i's first. Why? Because the i's will disappear after I multiply them out. Always multiply those guys or your radicals first if you have radicals. So let's see. I have x squared plus 5xi minus 5xi minus 25i squared. Yeah? Because they're conjugates, those middle terms should cancel out, which they do. So I have x squared minus 25, but I can't write I squared. What does I squared equal? Negative 1. And that makes this x squared plus 25. So those two parentheses multiply down to this. What haven't I dealt with? I haven't dealt with these guys. Let's go ahead and multiply those two, and I'll take that answer and multiply it by this. All right? X times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. 4 times x is 4x. And 4 times 4 is 16. That one's a lot easier, isn't it? So I have x squared plus 8x plus 16, because those two are like terms. And so now I need to multiply this by this. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times 25 is 25x squared. 8x times x squared is 8x squared. 8x times 25 is 200x. 16 times x squared is 16x squared. And 16 times 25 is 400. All right, in standard form, what comes first? X to the 4th. I didn't write one of these right. This one's supposed to be x to the 3rd, right? Yeah. All right, so now comes my x to the 3rd. And then how many x squared do I have? 25 plus 16? What is that? 41 x squared plus 200 x plus 400. That's my answer. So? Okay. Let's move on to this guy. 3/4. Does that mean negative 3/4 is also a 0? No. Only with radicals and i's. What is that going to look like in parentheses? 4x minus 3. Negative radical 6 is a 0. So what else is a 0? Positive radical 6. So I'm going to have x plus rad 6 and x minus rad 6. What should I multiply first? These guys, because the radicals will disappear. X times x is x squared minus x rad 6 plus x rad 6 minus rad 36. So that gives me x squared. Again, the conjugates cancel. Minus, what is the square root of 36? 6. That now needs to be multiplied by that one that I have not touched yet. 4x minus 3. So let's see. 4x times x squared is 4x squared. 4x times negative 6 is negative 24x. Negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared. And negative 3 times negative 6 is positive 18. So in standard form, again, I'm not multiplying my cubes very well. 4x to the third, now I have to write my x squared, minus 3x squared, minus 24x, plus 18. A lot of people put minus 18 there and lost a half a point. Don't be that person. Okay? All right, any other questions? All right, happy studying.